Hello and welcome. I am Michelle and I am doing a series on the definition of what it means to be either a woman or a man or maybe non-binary, because I believe that the sex system, the gender system, all the systems that are in the human being are not as binary as people think they are. And I think we just reinforce that concept in society, and that's why we think that's what it is. But it's a much more complex thing. Just like when people first presented that the earth was not flat, the world looked out and saw, oh, well, the ground looks flat to me and how I don't fall off, so how could it not be flat? Now we've since then realized the earth really is round, and we figured out how we don't fall off. So the same thing one day will finally result in the reality of who we are as human beings. But I'm going to present from my knowledge of this topic. I don't have a degree in this, but I have studied this. I even took some classes when I was in college to try to understand this, especially during gestation, which is when a lot of this is happening inside the body. When you're basically after conception and you're being developed into a human being. So right now we're looking at a picture of chromosomes, because basically our genes are held into chromosomes. A lot of people, we talk about DNA, which you can see down here. Let me move my cursor down. You can see here where it says DNA is, let me see, can you see? Yeah, you can see my cursor. So this DNA strand basically gets, and I don't know if this thing shows, I don't know about this part, histones and nucleosomes, and then they kind of get grouped together in this kind of formation, and then that formation is what creates what we call a chromosome. So basically a chromosome is this, it looks similar to this, and it's got a whole bunch of these little things here, and it's basically filled with DNA, our DNA sequence. And there's more, not all chromosomes do sex. Some chromosomes do your eye color, your hair color, how your body functions, how to develop your stomach, how to develop your heart, how to develop things. It's the information in your body to make your body, and there's a ton of genes in here. So that's what a chromosome looks like. And I think if I scroll down, I haven't watched this video. I just found this site today so I could show you what they look like. Here they're just talking about it's a double helix. It has these are different types of sugars and how they combine to each other. But that combination sequence is how it's created to make who we are. And it probably goes into these things that I don't know. Is there any other? That's the only picture that they were showing there. So that's basically what a chromosome looks like. However, now, so this one here gives us images of what chromosomes, different chromosomes, and what they shaped looks like. And then this is with Getty images. That's why we get all this stuff popped up with it. However, so there's a variety of shapes that chromosomes come into. And basically, it's basically sizes. If you look, they're almost always got an X look of some sort. Some have longer legs, some have long on both sides. So there's a variety of shapes of chromosomes. But the important one for this image, I'm going to move the cursor over, is over here, down here. Okay, and you'll notice that they're showing it. We say that we define a woman. Some people define a woman as being XX chromosome. However, that's got problems because there's people with XY chromosomes that doctors define as a girl at birth because they have the girl parts. So that's why it's and then they show a picture of an XY. Now notice that it's not really a Y. And I don't know if there's better images. I'll try to look for better images. What it is it's an X chromosome that's been degenerating over time, and it's losing its genes. Now, if you have a full X, double X chromosome, then you definitely have the genes that resists androgens. Now, in the previous, I was showing you the effects that androgens have on the body. That they're basically, their design is to masculinize. Whatever. So if you have the absence of androgens, then you will not masculinize, and if you have androgens, you will masculinize, but to whatever extent of the level of androgens you have. And so therefore, if you don't have a very strong level of androgens, you'll mildly masculinize. If you have a very strong version of androgens, then you will definitely masculinize. And that would be what we definitely declare as a man. But the point here in this conversation is that the Y, it's not really a Y, it's a X chromosome that's been degenerating over time. Now, there's another topic I'm going to bring up here in a minute, but let's see if I can find another picture showing it a little better. Oh, yeah, this one might. Yeah, notice here they kind of made it look a little more the XX or XY. Of course, I hate that they always do that or, because there's all kinds of variations. And I don't know, and I'm going to get to that too here in a minute. So basically the key ingredient, and it's just, if you search on the internet, you can find that what I'm telling you is true, that the Y chromosome has been degenerating over time. And so it's been losing its genes. Whoa, that went. All right, so now I'm going to go click over and let's see what I do. Yeah, so how many variations are there? Well, we know that we define XX as female and we define XY as male, but that's typically not a very good definition because, like I said, there are people who are born with XY who come out female. But there's also other variations. So in this one, it says I think it's saying it has 45 chromosomes. Let me see. Here's a rare sex chromosome variation, and so it basically only has one X chromosome. So yeah, it only has 45 chromosomes apparently. Now, people who are born with only one X chromosome, they don't have two X's, they don't have an X and a Y, they just have one X. We define them as Turner syndrome. There are some people who have 47 chromosomes and they have two X's and one Y chromosome, and we call those people as Klinefelter syndrome. There are people who are born with 47 chromosomes that have three X chromosomes. And then we have, and those are called trisomy, I guess because tri being three. There's other people born with 47 chromosomes and XYY. They call that Jacobs syndrome. We have people with two X's and two Y's. We have people who are three X's and one Y. And we have people with 49 chromosomes, four X's and one Y chromosome. So you can see that, you know what? Genetically, we are not binary. Genetically, there's all kinds of different combinations that the body is producing. And the number of people that this is happening is in the millions. So this is not like a one-off. This is not a mistake. You know, lots of people will describe this as a mistake or as a disorder or as some kind of problem. That's only because it's a problem if you're still trying to maintain that there's a binary. But it's not true. There's just too many people and they're normal people. So therefore, to say it's a disorder or whatever, that's just wrong. So when I searched on this, I actually asked how many variations, but not described as I think I said as errors or disorder. And so fortunately, I was able to finally get them to give me the answer, but not describing it as if some kind of disorder, because it's not a disorder. Anyways, it's you know what? Diversity is how the human race has survived. If we didn't have diversity, we would have been killed off a long time ago and the human race wouldn't exist. And so therefore, nature uses diversity to survive. And this is just diversity. Diversity is not a dirty word. Oh, well, okay, what did I ask next? I said, so basically, you know, for the longest time, we were all saying, those of us who are definitely non-binary people, that when we say non-binary, we're not saying we are a non-binary thing. What we're saying is we don't believe in the binary. That we, like, for instance, in my case, I say that I'm not a woman and I'm not a man. I am in between. I am, or I contain aspects of one and aspects of the other. And so I'm neither. And so, but then in 1990, that's when this happened. It says in 1990, it was discovered, this SRY gene. And it was this SRY gene that caused the triggering of the creation of testes. And so the key ingredient for doing that is that so initially when you're conceived, we all have the same gonad system. And that gonad system, if there's no enough masculizing hormones, then it will stay as ovaries, and your body will develop into what we call the female shape or a woman shape. However, let's not use the word woman yet, because still that's not true. Anyway, so, and then if you get enough androgens, then this will happen. But I'm going to go into a variation of, in other words, I've done some research on this, and I think I have an answer on how come this happens and when this happens, because it is important that the gonad system does turn into testes if we're going to develop into what we call a man, because you definitely need a lot more hormones than what the mother produces in order to masculinize. You got to remember, a woman has resistance to androgens, but she is also not producing the level of androgens that a man produces. And so therefore, they need something to produce a much more stronger level of androgens in order for the fetus to masculinize to the level that we call a true boy and a man. Although I just used a horrible term, because true boy, what is a true boy? So yeah, to masculinize to the level that we create what we would call a man. Anyways, what was I noticed I had forgot something, and I wanted to point it out. SRY Gene. Yeah, I think I've pointed out that we're masculinized. Okay. So basically my point is that if we're by default the same gonad system, and we by default will develop female, then masculinization happens. It happens to women too. They do masculinize. They just don't masculinize at the level that we would call a man masculinizes at, and they definitely resist the masculinization. But on the Y chromosome, because it's missing the genes that creates that resistance, therefore it makes the body be more receptive to, I know what I was going to say, receptive to masculinizing. And I think I was pointing out this here, like what mechanisms identify Craig. Oh yeah. So it turns out that, so this is important because I'm going to go back to this step in a second. So we all know that genes can get damaged, or like in this case with the with the Y chromosome, that the genes aren't there. And of course, your body's like, well, what do I do when the genes aren't there? And so first let me go into this. So basically, there's a mechanisms. Okay, correct damage. Let me read this. DNA repair mechanisms are cellular processes that identify and correct damage to DNA molecules, which is crucial for maintaining genomic, and I don't know, wish this stupid thing would not be there. There you go. Integrity and preventing mutations. These mechanisms involve a variety of enzymes and pathways that work to repair different types of DNA damage, including base damage, strands breaks, and mismatch. That's interesting. Base damage, that's an interesting term. And then here's a breakdown. It talks about, basically, it goes and describes, and I've seen this in a class about how it repairs and fixes. So what I suspect is happening is that whenever the fetus is in the womb and the DNA repair system comes along the Y chromosome, it discovers that, hey, it's missing these important genes. What's going on here? When I'm a programmer, and let's say I'm doing a database or even XML tags, and I'm looking for a specific tag in my program, and I see that the tag is missing, a good recovery from that mistake or error is to go ahead and create that tag so that the next time when you go to read it, it will be there, and it might have a default value that, because sometimes if you don't do a good job at recovering from a missing piece of information, you would it could crash your program. Anyway, so I suspect what's going on is right at the very beginning, when the DNA repair system mechanism is going and it discovers this Y chromosome, that it says, hey, we need to repair this. And I think what it does is it creates this SRY gene in its place, which is a good thing if you're trying to create a male person. Well, if you're definitely trying to masculinize. And so therefore, now that gene is in place, now there's this thing that converts the ovaries to testicles, and then all the male hormones are, the heavy testosterone is introduced, and the body starts masculinizing at a much larger amount of scale. So now the reason why you might say, well, why is that important? And I would say this: there are people out there who are still trying to fight that the binary is real. And therefore, in their minds, that the SRY gene is like proof of it. It's like, hey, we got the XX chromosome that proves that there's women. And of course, they dismiss any characteristics where you're XY chromosome and you look like, and you're born as a woman, that's just an error. That's a disorder, that's not really a woman, even though that poor person was raised as a girl her whole life, and everybody would consider her a woman. But anyways, these people, they're kind of rude. They tend to, they just hold on tight, kind of like the flat earthers did. Anyways, so they say this SRY gene is like proof that there's a difference between men and women. Well, maybe not. Maybe because if I'm correct that this SRY gene is more of a repair to the missing genes that are on the Y chromosome, then no, we all start out with this spectrum, this thing, and it's not proof that this person was conceived and started out with an SRY gene. And I don't know how you now counter that argument in the end, if it turns out the SRY gene was there from the very beginning. And I don't know the answer to that question. And I don't think anybody does know. Although I was asking questions about, how come certain things are defined this way and that way. And they admitted that they don't know enough about the SRY gene because they are finding in research contradictory evidence to what they initially thought the SRY gene does. And so there's lots to be learned about the SRY gene. But the point is that, and then even with the SRY gene in place and the ovaries are converted to testicles, that does not mean that certain systems in the body will have gotten the proper amount of testosterone to convert, to masculinize that system into what we call a male. And so now, so I'm going to conclude here because this is probably turning into a long video. But I just want to say that the proof is that one, we're not a binary system. Chromosomally, we have more than, we have, I don't know how many, it didn't really say how many there are, but there's a lot of variation in the chromosomes, which are genes. There's a lot, and these are sex chromosomes, that the Y chromosome is not like a Y chromosome. It's an X chromosome that's been degenerated, that is proven. It's a known fact, and it is still degenerating, by the way. And which is interesting because what that says is that maleness is a mutation in essence. The males want to sit and say that those of us who are not binary or transgendered or any one of these other syndromes that they say or whatever, or variations, that they're what was the word I just used? A mutation. But what's funny is that men are a mutation, because the Y chromosome is just been degenerating and losing its genes. Anyways, so, the irony of that. And, well, I'll get it. That's something else. Anyways, so, yes, so the evidence is there. The body is not just two. We definitely are not binary, for sure. Now, and I would lean to the fact that the timing of things, the variations of chromosomes, the there's not one system in the body. There's multiple systems in the body. So if there's enough hormones to masculinize, if there is or not enough hormones, that creates a spectrum. It really does create a spectrum. The human condition is a spectrum of people. Now we can dress people up two certain ways and make it look like there's a binary. And if one day we ever finally admit that the human condition is a spectrum, what would that look like? I don't know. I think for a while it'll still look kind of binary-ish because people look at women. For the longest time were property of men, and they still are. Women still are considered a subclass. Women still don't get the privilege men get. It still doesn't exist. And a lot of women don't. Some women definitely try to break free from the bonds that the patriarchy is created on women, and some women have not. And so, if we finally acknowledge the reality that genetically, hormonally, the human condition is a spectrum, it still will take a while for people to break out of what they know as common. It'll take a long time, and its form at first will resemble still similar to what people knew before, or what and of course older generations will hold on tight to their beliefs and they won't let it go, and it'll take newer generations to finally kind of move away. And so it's going to take a really long time before we'll ever see what life really could have looked like had we not created this patriarchal system of a binary sex and binary gender, an uneven division of power. It's going to take a really long time before that ever really reveals what it possibly could have been, and if we'd have just been open-minded and being willing to see ourselves for who we possibly could, and could have been good human beings to the point where we allowed equality rather than creating some hierarchical structure, claiming that one is better than the other, one deserves more than the other, one has more privilege than the other. And so what a shame that we are where we are. Hopefully one day, just like one day they finally cross over and admit that the world is round. It's a sphere. And so, and that, the sun does not circle the earth. We circle the sun. We exist in a universe. And so, it takes time, sadly, because we have resistance. We have people who, they benefit from it, the system. And so therefore they don't want to give up what they benefit from. Anyway, so there you go. This is literally the genetic proof of who we are, and that human beings are really a spectrum, and that we are not binary. And that is why I don't believe in the binary. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to see you in the next one.